Hello and welcome to the tutorial for my tool ShapeMotion. This is a tool which will help you move layers and custom properties in different shapes. So let's get started and see what it can do. Up here is the interface for the tool. There's a few different sections. First we've got motion type, and these are the different types of shapes that you can make. You've got a circle, rectangle, multi-sided polygon, heart, asteroid, and loops, and we'll get into the details of these later. Next up is the property that you want to work with, and you can either be position or a custom property. And then you've got this checkbox for auto orientation, which we'll talk about later. So let's just get started with a simple example. I'm going to click on this arrow shape and leave it on circle, leave it on position, and click Create Shape Motion. Okay, first thing we see is that we've got a null added. This is going to be how you control everything about your shape. So if I scroll through the timeline, you can see that our arrow moves in a circle. And the way we control the properties of this circle are with the effects that are on arrow control. So if we take a look at them over here, we'll go through these and see what they can do. First up is radius, and this is the size of the circle that we're going to have. So as I increase this, you can see we've now got a larger circle. And if I decrease it, we'll get a much smaller one. Next up is speed, and there's a few options for working with speed. First is speed active. When this is checked, we're going to get our speed from the second property called speed in seconds. And this is saying how many seconds we want it to take to make one full revolution. So right now it's on 4. So as you can see, as I drag through the timeline, the arrow comes back around at 4 seconds. If I make this 8, it will take 8 seconds and it will be a slower animation. And if I make it 2, it will be a quicker one. Okay. If I uncheck this, then we're using completion, and completion is what percent along the shape we want the layer to be. So while at 0 it's at the beginning, and as I drag it to 100, it comes back around. Now this lets me add keyframes for different parts of the shape, so I can have it go forward, come back a bit, and go forward again. Okay, I'm going to undo before we get to the rest of these effects. There's an option over here, Auto Orientation, and when that's selected, our layer will automatically be oriented along the path of motion. Now right now it's off by 90 degrees, but I can come into the arrow and change it to 90, and now it will follow along the path. Okay, now I'm going to show you how this works with a custom property. So I've got a layer here of particles, and the particles are emitting at this producer icon. And there's no velocity and no gravity, so the particles are just going to stay exactly where this producer icon is. So in order to apply the effect to this position, I'm going to choose custom property up here, and you'll notice that as soon as I do that, I can no longer choose auto orientation because it doesn't quite make sense in this context. And the custom property you can choose is any array of 2 or more values. Alright, so I'll click Create Shape Motion, and now you can see we've got a circle. Okay, now that we've got some more visual feedback, I'm going to go through what the rest of these options do. So the first is offset. And offset changes where in the circle the starting position is. So as I scroll, you can see that it's shifting it one way or the other. Now offset works on percentage, so a value of 100 will bring me back around to the same spot. Alright, then we've got reverse direction. By default, the shape will go in a clockwise direction. If I choose reverse direction, then we will get a counterclockwise direction. Okay, I'm going to speed this up a little bit so I can show you the next effect. Spiral, if I make it a positive number, will make a spiral come out from the original magnitude. If I make this a negative number, it will go in toward the center. Then we've got beginning and ending points. So these are specific points where the circle begins and ends. And by default, they're at the same position, which is right here. Now if I change one of these, you can see that the beginning and ending positions are now different. And I can do that the same as the ending point as well. By choosing reverse motion, this is a shortcut to switch what the beginning and ending points are. Now it's going to keep going in a clockwise direction unless I come back here and choose reverse direction, which will make it go counterclockwise. Then I'll come down here and we've got rotate, and that simply rotates your entire path. Scale X, we'll scale it horizontally, and scale Y, we'll scale it vertically. This last option down here, you never need to change. This is just an effect that the layer itself is referencing to figure out where it should be. One final thing here is if you want to change the position of your entire shape, just take the null and move that around. Okay, I'm going to undo and we can see what other types of shapes we can make. Alright, next up is rectangle. And if I choose rectangle, I start with a square. I can choose scale X and scale Y to change the shape of the square. And rectangle has one more option. It has this ease corners checkbox. So by default, my producer is going around at a steady state, and you can see that because there's an even distribution of particles along the entire path. However, if I choose ease corners, you'll see that we have bigger groupings at the corners now because the producer is slowing down and speeding up at each one. And if I preview this out, you can see that it's slowing down and speeding up. Okay, let's move on. Our next shape is multi-sided polygon, and if I choose this, we get a polygon where all the edges are the same length. So for this, we have a control of number of sides, and I can change this to anything I want. 4, 5, 6, 7. You also have the option ease corners, same as the rectangle, and this will ease in each of the corners. Next on our list is heart. For heart, we've got a couple options. You've got bloat top and bloat bottom. Now these start at values of 2 and 5, which gives us this nice heart shape. If I change this, then we can get some more interesting shapes as well. Okay, next is asteroid. An asteroid is like the multi-sided polygon, except the edges curve inward. And much like the multi-sided polygon, we can change the number of sides we've got. Now a nice part about this is if you actually make the sides negative, then you will have the edges curving outward instead of inward. And lastly, we have loops, and this is our most complex and random shape. For loops, we start with this for-looped shape, and as I scroll through the timeline, you can see how that's drawing on. To change the shape of this, you've got horizontal 1 and 2, vertical 1 and 2, and exponent 1 and 2. And as I scroll through these, you can see what they do. Alright, that's pretty much it for what this tool can do. I hope you've enjoyed the tutorial.